Welcome to the deep dive, everybody. Today we're diving into the mind of, well, Sam Altman, this major player in the tech world.
Huge, really.
Yeah, and I mean, especially, when we talk about AI, right? He's the CEO of OpenAI, the company behind, well, ChatGPT and DALL-E too, of course.
ChatGPT, yeah.
And it's like he's become this sort of oracle, this, tech oracle, especially for all those people out there in the, startup world and the whole innovation space.
He really has a knack for, seeing what's next in tech.
Totally. And to get, a really well-rounded view of how he thinks, we've actually pulled together a whole bunch of his blog posts and public announcements, even some things from his recruiting calls.
Okay.
It's kind of like we're getting the sneak peek, into how one of the most important figures in tech thinks today.
Very cool. So where should we start with this?
So first up, let's talk about this idea of AI for everyone.
Okay.
So Altman recently announced this new AI model called GPT-4o. And, he's been really, really clear about wanting to make really powerful AI tools, accessible to just, well, everyone.
Yeah, make them free or at least really low cost.
Exactly. And it's actually a pretty big change from what OpenAI was doing in the beginning.
Right, because initially their whole thing was about directly creating benefits with AI. And now it's like they're shifting gears to empowering everyone else to use it for their own purposes.
Yeah, he actually said, our initial conception was that we would just create AI and use it to, create all these great things for the world. But instead, it now looks like, we'll create AI and then other people will use it to create all sorts of amazing things that we all benefit from.
That's really insightful.
Yeah, it is. And you can see his excitement about, all these ways that we'll be able to interact with AI in the future.
I mean, he seems really into voice and video interfaces, right?
Yeah, with GPT-4o, he was saying that the interface feels like it's straight out of a movie.
Wow.
It's like having this, super smart AI coworker that understands, your
He
requests.
understands natural language.
Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing.
It really is.
Yeah.
But then we have to talk about the other side of this,
Yeah.
what we're calling this DALL-E 2 dilemma, right? This AI image generator it's amazing, really impressive.
Yeah, it's incredible.
But you have to wonder what it means for the future of, creative work.
Right.
And how it will impact jobs.
Oh, totally. And Altman he actually talks about this head on. He's realistic about the fact that AI, just like any new tech, it's probably gonna, it's gonna change some jobs.
Make some of them less relevant.
Yeah, but he believes that it's going to create new ones.
Yeah.
And it will make the jobs we do have better by, taking care of those boring tasks, the repetitive stuff.
Right. So it's not all doom and gloom, right?
Right. No, not at all. But he's definitely saying, hey, we got to understand, the potential downsides before we just unleash something like this.
Yeah, so it's like cautious optimism.
Yes, exactly. And you see this same cautious optimism with this thing he's really excited about.
Oh, tell me.
It's kind of a different field.
Okay.
It's fusion energy.
Oh, wow.
He's a huge believer in this company, Helion Energy, and they're working to make fusion power real.
Fusion power. Wow, he must really believe in it.
He predicts they'll get to this point where they're producing more energy than they're using, like net electricity, by 2024.
Wow.
And this is crazy, with a long-term goal of energy that costs 1 cent per kilowatt hour.
1 cent, that would change everything.
It would change everything. And this just shows, he's willing to back these ideas that seem, maybe a little radical, but if they have this huge long-term potential, he sees abundant, cheap energy as the key to solving, poverty and climate change, just, all these big problems.
I mean, it makes sense. Energy is sort of the foundation for everything.
It is. It totally is. So, we're talking about this guy who's backing fusion energy. He's, leading the way in AI. How does he become so successful?
Right.
Luckily for us, he actually shared some thoughts on this in this piece. He called it "What I Wish Someone Had Told Me."
Okay.
It's kind of like it's a list of advice based on his own experience.
Very cool. Any highlights?
Yeah. Well, one of the big things is optimism, being obsessed with your idea and believing in yourself, especially when you're just getting started.
Yeah, makes sense.
But he talks about, putting together the right team, having that grit to just see things through when it gets tough.
Right, because it will.
It will, and he's really big on just ignoring all that short-term noise and focusing on the long game. And that, that ties into this thing he talks about a lot, compounding exponentials. He loves those businesses that they just keep snowballing as they grow.
Right, that momentum.
And he gives a lot of credit to the culture at Y Combinator,
Oh, okay.
where it's all about building companies with long-term value, and helping each other out.
Very cool. And I'm really curious about this thing I've heard him talk about before.
What's that?
His thoughts on researchers versus founders.
Oh, yeah.
He's noticed some really interesting differences between the two, but also some really crucial similarities when you look at the most effective people in both worlds.
Yeah, and he often brings up this thing called the Hamming question.
Okay.
And this question is, what are the most important problems in your field and why aren't you working on them?
I like that.
Yeah.
It's like a gut check.
And it's something that the best people, no matter their background, they're always asking themselves this.
Yeah, they're always looking for those problems that really matter.
Right. But it's not just finding the problem, it's about like having that laser focus on the next step. But at the same time, still keeping that big picture in mind.
Right. It's like zooming in and out at the same time.
Exactly. And he also talks a lot about, persistence and hard work. There's no shortcuts there.
Nope. You got to put in the hours.
You got to put in the hours, but it's not just, blind effort. He says it's also about, being willing to try things out, being honest about what's working, what's not, and making changes quickly.
So rapid iteration, learning from your mistakes, constantly improving.
Yeah, that's it.
Very cool.
And we can't forget creativity, right? The best people are always coming up with ideas.
All the time. Not all of them are winners.
Of course not.
But that flow of ideas, it's got to be constant.
Yeah, they have this idea factory always going, and they value autonomy.
They're not afraid to go against the grain.
Exactly, which, that brings us to Project Covalence.
Project Covalence, what's that?
You might be thinking, what does this, pandemic thing have to do with all this? But it shows how Altman puts these principles to work in the real world.
Okay.
During COVID, he realized that clinical trials they were way too slow.
That's a big problem.
Yeah, so he got together with TrialSpark and this guy, Dr. Mark Fishman, to create this platform to speed things up.
Wow, so he's taking action.
Yeah, he's bringing together these experts using his network to solve this real-world problem.
It's like a perfect example of his, bias toward action.
Yeah, he's not afraid to step outside his comfort zone.
I like it.
So, we've talked about AI, fusion energy, all these success principles, but what about coming up with those game-changing ideas in the first place?
Yeah, how do you even come up with the next big thing?
What's Altman's advice on that?
Yeah, give us the secrets.
Well, he says that just handing someone an idea, it just doesn't work. Instead, he says that, being able to generate ideas, it's a skill.
It's something you develop.
Yeah, you can't just wait around for inspiration.
You have to make it happen.
So where do you even start?
Yeah, where do you even begin with this whole, idea generation thing?
Discipline?
He says the environment you're in, it plays a huge role.
Okay.
He talks about surrounding yourself with people who have what he calls this high idea flux.
High idea flux. I like that.
Yeah, these are the people who are, constantly throwing out ideas.
The idea people.
Even if those ideas, they sound a little crazy at first.
Yeah, it's like having a built-in brainstorming team.
Exactly. And it's not just about, having a lot of ideas.
Right.
It's also about, the quality of the thinking. You want people who are optimistic. They're thinking about the future.
Yeah.
And they're not afraid of these plans that, that seem a little out there.
And he also suggests looking 20 years into the future and then thinking backwards from there.
Oh, that's a good one.
You know, what technologies are coming? What problems will we face?
It's a good way to really stretch your thinking and see things that maybe you wouldn't see right now.
Right. And it's like those tectonic shifts he's always talking about.
Yeah, those big changes that reshape everything.
Yeah, think about the smartphone. What's the next big shift like that? And how do you get ready for it?
Yeah.
And then there's this other phrase he has. This year is possible. Last year wasn't.
I like that.
It's about, recognizing those moments when when something has changed.
When something new becomes possible.
Yeah, it could be like a technology breakthrough,
Mm.
or maybe people start behaving differently.
Right, or the laws change.
Yeah, and if you think like, wait, this is finally possible, but it wasn't before,
Yeah.
then that's a good sign that you're on the right track.
That you found something interesting.
And if you think that maybe, next year it might be too late.
Oh, that's even better.
Yeah.
That sense of urgency.
Yeah, so let's say you find one of these this year's possible opportunities.
Cool.
How do you know if it's actually a good idea? Worth chasing?
Right. How do you separate the good ones from the bad ones?
Well, Altman has a few tests he uses.
Okay.
He asks, could this be huge if it worked? It's not enough for it to be a good idea. It has to have the potential to be, really big.
Right. You're looking for that snowball effect again.
Right. That exponential growth.
It compounds over time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he also talks about something called founder company fit.
Founder company fit. What is that?
He says it's just as important as, whether people actually want your product.
Interesting.
It means that you have to be like really passionate about the problem.
Yeah.
And you have to have the skills and experience to actually solve it.
It's like you're the right person to be tackling this specific problem.
You're the right person at the right time.
Yeah.
And then finally, Altman has this really interesting test for a good idea. Can you explain why most people think it's a bad idea, but you understand why it's actually good?
Ooh, I like that.
It's about seeing the potential where other people just see risk.
Yeah, having that conviction, that inner belief that maybe others don't have.
Right. It goes back to his point about the strength of being misunderstood.
Being okay with being wrong in the short term.
Yeah, because maybe you'll be right in the long term.
Yeah, you're playing a different game.
You're playing a totally different game.
And that brings us back to Altman.
It does.
He's playing that long game, always betting on these ideas that seem, I don't know, crazy to other people.
Maybe a little out there.
But he sees the potential that they don't.
So as we wrap up this first part of our deep dive into, the mind of Sam Altman, we're left with this really interesting question for you, the listener.
That's a question.
What's your this year's possible, last year was an opportunity?
Ooh, yeah. What's that bold idea that you've been thinking about, but maybe you've been putting off?
What are you gonna do to make it happen?
Think about it. Explore it. Maybe even talk to those high idea flux people you know.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe you'll be the one who turns that crazy idea into reality.
It's super inspiring to see somebody like Altman, who's just not afraid to think big.
Totally.
And he's out there challenging how things are done.
And what's really remarkable is that, his thinking, it applies to so many different things.
It really does.
Like, AI, obviously, energy startups, even these big global problems.
It all comes back to like this core belief that, people can do amazing things.
That's at the heart of it.
And that, innovation, that's the key.
Right.
And that's what makes this deep dive, I think, so valuable for everyone listening.
Yeah.
It's not just about, understanding, what Altman's predicting.
Or what he's investing in, but it's about like really understanding how he thinks.
How he approaches these problems.
And his optimism.
Yeah, his optimism about the future. It's contagious almost.
Totally. And he gives us such, practical advice.
Right. Think about those takeaways,
Yeah.
Surround yourself with the right people.
Build that culture where ideas are flowing.
Think long term.
Yeah.
Find those moments where things become possible.
Those this year is possible moments.
And don't be afraid to go after those ideas that other people might think are crazy.
It's like a blueprint, right?
It really is.
For anyone who wants to, do something meaningful.
Yeah, whether you're starting a company,
Yeah.
leading a team,
Yeah.
or just making a difference in your own little corner of the world.
It all starts with that question that,
That big question.
what's your this year is possible, last year was an opportunity.
What's that thing that you've been, thinking about that's been bubbling up inside you?
That's been waiting for the right moment.
Yeah, it's about looking around and seeing the possibilities.
Not just, what's not working.
Right.
It's about believing that we can shape things,
Yeah, we're not just stuck with how things are.
We can invent the future.
Right. And it all comes down to taking action.
That's it.
As Altman says, the best way to predict the future is to invent it.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into, the mind of Sam Altman, we want to leave you with this final challenge.
What's the challenge?
What's your this year is possible
Uh,
idea? What's that big, bold step?
that you've been maybe a little hesitant to take.
Don't let fear hold you back.
Surround yourself with people who inspire you and think big
Yeah.
and start building that future that you want to see.
That's it for this deep dive into the insights of Sam Altman.
Great stuff.
Thanks for joining us.
And until next time,
Keep learning
keep exploring.
and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible. It's really something else.
I mean, it's pretty inspiring, right?
Yeah.
Like to see someone like Altman, he just gets it. You know,
Yeah.
like you understands that to make progress, you gotta be willing to challenge the status quo.
Y'all be afraid to shake things up a bit.
Right. And what's so interesting about all this is that, I mean, his thinking, it's not just limited to, like one specific area.
No.
Whether we're talking about AI, obviously, or energy, or startups, or even like tackling these massive like global challenges,
Mhm.
it all sort of boils down to this core belief he has.
Yeah.
You know?
In human potential.
Yeah, like deep down, he really believes that people can do incredible things.
And that innovation, that's the real key.
That's the thing that's going to unlock it all.
And that's why I think, this deep dive, it's not just about understanding, Sam Altman.
Right.
It's about understanding how he thinks.
How he approaches problems.
Yeah.
Like if we can learn to think a little bit more like him,
Mm-hmm.
That's where the real value is.
Yeah, absolutely. And he gives us some really practical advice too.
Oh yeah, tons of it. And it's all stuff we can actually use.
Yeah.
Like remember those key takeaways we've been talking about?
Yeah.
Surrounding yourself with the right people.
People who inspire you.
Yeah. And creating this culture where like ideas are just constantly flowing.
Yeah, and thinking about the long game.
Not getting caught up in all the little
Yeah,
distractions.
being able to spot those this year is possible moments.
Yeah, when the time is right for a big idea.
And then having the courage, the guts to actually go after those ideas.
Even if other people might think they're a little crazy.
It's almost like he's giving us a blueprint,
A blueprint for making a difference, right?
Yeah.
Whether you're starting a company or leading a team, or just trying to, make things a little bit better in your own little part of the world.
It's a roadmap.
And it all starts with that one question.
That big question.
What's your this year is possible, last year was an opportunity.
What's that thing that's been, kind of nagging at you in the back of your mind?
The thing that you've been putting off.
But it has potential.
Yeah, it's about, it's about looking around, really looking around and seeing what's possible.
Seeing the opportunities.
Yeah, not just focusing on the problems or the limitations.
It's about believing that we can actually shape the future,
Not just be swept along by it.
Yeah.
We can actually grab hold of it and steer it in the direction we want to go.
We can invent it.
Exactly. And it all boils down to taking action.
Doing something, right?
Yeah, because like Altman himself says, the best way to predict the future is to invent it.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, this exploration into the mind of Sam Altman.
This journey we've been on.
Yeah, we want to leave you with a challenge.
A final challenge.
Final challenge. What's your this year's possible idea?
What's that bold move that you've been, maybe you've been a little hesitant to make?
What's that next step?
Don't let fear hold you back.
Surround yourself with those people who inspire you, who lift you up.
Think big and start building.
Start building that future that you want to see.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
That's it for this deep dive into the insights of Sam Altman.
Great episode.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
And we'll catch you next time.
Keep learning, keep exploring,
Keep pushing the boundaries.
and keep inventing the future.